The Five Nights at Freddy's 10-year anniversary just happened as of recording this, and I wasn't really sure how I could talk about it. But then I realized I can talk about everything in one video, and that's what you're here for. I'm gonna run down every single announcement, new game, project, all that stuff that happened for FNAF's 10th anniversary, and my thoughts on them. The very first release was the MyPopgoes evergreen prequel, MyPopgoes. It's a short and really cute, basically FNAF-themed Tamagotchi. I really don't have a better way to describe it, but it's honestly pretty neat. It has a lot of minigame variety that I definitely wouldn't have expected out of a small anniversary title like this. And look, unlike mainline FNAF, I'm not super invested and super knowledgeable on the MyPopgoes lore, but honestly, I think this is a really cute game. Again, for what it is, a small anniversary title that costs a couple of bucks. It's honestly really cute. Topped it off with the fact, since this game is also set in the same universe as Five Nights at Candy's, this really helps celebrate the fan games, the fan community aspect of Five Nights at Freddy's, which, for those who don't know, somehow we found the wait of 3 months between games so unbearable we created dozens of fan games, some of which rival, if not are even better than the official stuff. And Five Nights at Candy's is easily one of the most iconic and recognizable fan games, up there in popularity with the official games. It's overall fine. I don't really have any strong feelings towards it either way. I think it's an inoffensive, cute anniversary title. But if we want to talk about fan games, what better than the demo that we got for the Joy of Creation's Remake? And oh boy, do I have a lot of things to say. And they're mostly positive. So I want to get one of my biggest gripes out of the way just right now. It is not that well explained. Most of my knowledge on how the stuff works is from knowledge of the original Joy of Creation. And I'm gonna be honest, didn't understand how to recharge the flashlight for like 5 deaths. So that was great. It's more so the actual tutorial is really vague, mostly because it's cryptic drawings on the wall. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. And some of the things that it doesn't tell you are more in-depth things like spawn mechanics that are really helpful to know. But at the same time, it took me genuinely a dozen attempts, probably, to actually understand how the stuff with the fuses works. Which just meant I kept dying to main fuse going out before anyone other than Freddy spawned. But aside from that complaint, the gameplay loop is genuinely really good, and I love the fact that almost all of this, even at its most hectic, is all under your control. Because the animatronic spawn decisions are, they spawn when you replace main fuse. So you are controlling when the new animatronics spawn. Because if main fuse dies, so do you. But the longer you hold out, the less of the night you have to do with another animatronic. And for time passing, it's when you flash Freddy. So the entire game is moving when you are telling it to move. And despite that, you're still dealing with all these things being thrown at you. But it always feels so good. because you have to adapt to what you are doing and what you are making the game do. Because it's all in your control, and that feels so much nicer than just sitting in an office, closing doors, or flashing the animatronics for a predetermined amount of time before the game decides, okay, we can pass an hour. In this, you decide when that hour passes. You decide when the new animatronics spawn. You decide when things get tougher. And genuinely, it creates a very stressful and a very hectic environment. But it felt so good to actually beat. I was genuinely just... It was really good, is what I'm trying to say. I don't really have a good way to put it. Like, obviously, it has great visuals, but the actual gameplay loop is not only fun and engaging, but it's also stressful and tense, which is what I want from this kind of game. Because the stress of losing is the bigger issue than the stress of getting jump scared and dying. If you like the original Joy of Creation, or are a FNAF fan who never played it, I highly, highly recommend the Joy of Creation Remake demo, ignoring the fact that name is a mouthful. Next up is VIP, an interactive novel labeled number 0 in the series. And how do I talk about this? This is a book, because it comes with issues of, what do I use as background footage? Will I talk over it? How do I talk about it? Since a book is almost entirely about story, which is stuff that gets kind of iffy to talk about, because I like trying to avoid spoilers in my videos unless they very explicitly need to. And my brain went, oh, this is the first time I've talked about a book on this channel. I forgot my most popular video! Of all videos for me to forget I made, it's literally my most popular one! Either way, VIP is book 0 in the brand new FNAF book series of interactive novels. Or, as I'm more familiar with the name, Choose Your Own Adventure books. And when they were originally announced, I was super excited for the week before. A book written by E.C. Myers, who did all of the Ruby books, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and also a prequel to FNAF 1 showing Phone Guy's perspective. That is a book that sounds really interesting and I'm really excited for, as much as I can be for a book. But VIP kind of just came out of nowhere with the same author, and it's alright. It's not amazing, and it's definitely not bad, but it's really awkward to talk about because the core of what makes a story good falls horribly flat. That being the characters, because God, they suck. Ike's just kind of a generic kid who mostly serves as a MacGuffin or a damsel in distress for the sake of the plot. And Devin just isn't interesting as a protagonist in the slightest. He kind of just exists. He is selfish, but he's a kid. Most kids are selfish, and besides, having a negative character trait's kind of a good thing. Character flaws are important. But he isn't interesting, he isn't remarkable, and he doesn't do anything that makes you want to root for him despite his flaws. He's just kinda there to move the story forwards. I can say the same about the pig, and every other character isn't named and only has a couple lines of dialogue. At most. The core of a story, a core of what makes it good, what makes it fun, what makes it interesting, is the characters. And if they're gonna be one note, bland, or uninteresting, why bother? And look, I get it's free, I get it's relatively short, but at the same time, you don't need that much time to build up your 3 characters and making them interesting. Because guess what? The only characters with distinct personalities in the entire book are the glam rock animatronics. The ones who had an entire game. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. The plot twist is foreshadowed in a way I like, where it is very obviously stated, but it is something that you can very easily forget about or let slip your mind, and if it does, well, there's no more reminding you of the plot twist or foreshadowing to it till it happens. I think it's generally well done and well made, but for me, it's really hard to care about it when what really matters about any story is really lacking. Day 4 was the Dawko Scott Cawthon interview 2.0. And I'm just gonna be blunt when I say this. This is actually a really good interview. It's really insightful, and it talks about a lot of the newer projects, some of the upcoming stuff, and since it released earlier than planned, we also learned some stuff we probably weren't supposed to know yet, that we were supposed to learn like 2 days from now, but it is genuinely a really good interview. I think it's insightful, and genuinely, if you're a fan of the series, I think I highly recommend checking it out, but there isn't much I can say. Scott talks about some of the stuff in the series, gives some teases. Some of the stuff we're actually going to probably mention later in this video, and honestly, it's a lot of stuff like that. Some insight into how Security Breach went the way it did, some things he would love to do in the future, acknowledgement that, yeah, after the game Steelwool announced what was supposed to be the day prior, but is now like 2 days from now, and we'll get there in a minute, that they are going to be making another game, which is hopefully another VR game. Seriously, their VR games are incredible for FNAF. Even speaking of VR, an incredible thing where Scott kind of talked about playtesting Help Wanted 1, because he had a VR headset at the time. He could not beat the Funtime Auditorium level. I don't blame him. And then him and Dawko ended up having a bit of an insight, because a lot of people who watch these videos of YouTubers playing VR games, especially VR horror games, it doesn't look that scary to you, right? Yeah. I have a VR headset. I've played these games in VR. Trust me, it is 10 times worse than you'd expect from looking at YouTube. And that's just because, like, you can see the scale of these things. Something I think any FNAF fan needs to try at some point is just booting up, like, the parts and service repair minigames and Help Wanted 1 in VR. Because seeing the actual scale of these animatronics standing in front of you is just insane. Like, the first time I did it, and I was not in any danger at that point, I genuinely had to, like, take a step back to realize what I was looking at. Because that was like an 9 foot tall bunny standing in front of me. And it was genuinely blew me away. Also, real quick before we continue, please consider liking and subscribing if you're enjoying the video. It helps out an absolute ton, and I'd really like to hit 500 subscribers before FNAF's 15th anniversary. Five Nights at Freddy's X Dead by Daylight. This was the announcement on the 5th day, and oh, that was a fun day to be in the FNAF community. Frankly, just a fun day to be on Twitter. So before we talk about Dead by Daylight, and the collab, and all the stuff around the actual game and the announcement, let's talk about the pre-announcement. It was a complete war on Twitter between Fortnite and Dead by Daylight, especially pretty well from the moment they announced that they were doing a collab, because people wanted to see both. I personally didn't care either way. People really wanted Fortnite, and honestly, I always thought their evidence was really stupid. For clarification, the evidence a lot of the people who were pro Fortnite was providing was, oh, well, there's a Fortnite update scheduled for the same day. That can be a very obvious coincidence. Like, I literally saw Walmart Gaming Canada post a reply. So many fake leaks, so many arguments. I think it was hilarious. Scott even started going in people's live streams who were waiting for the announcement and just being like, there's an announcement? Like, very, like, making, like, tongue-in-cheek. It was hilarious to watch on the outside. It also helped that, for the most part, I really didn't care. It was pretty well guaranteed to be a live service game. I do not care for most live service games. I care for very little, in fact. I just personally prefer single-player, campaign-driven adventures compared to multiplayer-focused games. So, since it was almost certainly going to be one of those, I didn't really care. As for Dead by Daylight specifically, I have Dead by Daylight. I have played way too much of it. It's mostly just a game I play with a close friend of mine because they really like it and I enjoy it enough. And frankly, I just like playing with my friend and getting to hang out with them, even if it's just over a voice call on an online game. Who doesn't like that? The killer has a high likelihood to probably be Springtrap, which would be honestly really cool and could have a unique gimmick. And hopefully we get a survivor and a map. Just make it the FNAF 1 location. And for a survivor, I don't know. Because most FNAF protagonists are faceless, aside from someone like Gregory. And it'd be really weird to have a small child in this game. You, of course, have Cassidy and Charlotte, who followed the exact same issues. And, I mean, you technically have Vanessa, but the problem is she's also an antagonist. And then, of course, there's the Help Wanted 2-player character who's unnamed, undesigned, and basically all I have to go off of is they're probably Cassie's dad. Point being, most of the ones that are iconic have an issue, and everyone else is a child. And yes, I know, I forgot multiple protagonists, but they still have the same issue. Like, if we want to talk about UCN's protagonist, that's probably William Afton, who obviously will not work. Either way. Day 6 brought us the trailer for FNAF Secret of the Mimic, which is not only a game centering around the Mimic, who is shaping up to be the brand new antagonist of the series, but also from this tiny, like, 30-second teaser we got, it also seems to be our Fall Fest game. Since there's a brief moment where you can see the year 1979, which is set during the era we know Fall Fest to take place in, since we know it took place between 1970 and 1983. Top that off with the fact we do know the Mimic is an older model sharing teeth with the daycare attendant, both of which seem to come from a much earlier iteration of Freddy's than we're aware of. Look, this is an announcement that I have very little to say about, mostly because it is a 30-second trailer. It is amazing people like Dawko were able to talk about this for 13 minutes. Even going frame by frame, there's not much to it. Day 7 is home to potentially the most divisive announcement of the entire week. Mostly because, geez, I have not heard many good things about it from a lot of people that have come out after day 1, but people loved it on day 1. That being 5 laps at Freddy's. And I have a lot to say about this one. Mostly because this is a game. It's been a while since we've talked about one of those. No, just get out of the gate. One of the most baffling things. This game was developed by Click Team, which is a game engine. They made it in Unreal Engine 4. one of their competitors. And trust me, this game is very interesting. So let's talk about the positives first. For some of the levels, I actually really like the track design. Specifically, Midnight Motorist actually has a really well done straightaway. It's a highway. It is taken directly from the minigame this level is based off of. But you can go with the ongoing traffic, where it's a lot safer but there's no reward, or go against it, where there's boosters, power-ups, and even a shortcut that you have to be on that side of the road to access. Said shortcut is also taken directly from the original minigame. Not to mention the amazing remix of Midnight Motorist's theme, which you can hear right now. It's playing in the background. It will be playing for this entire day. Honestly, this entire track is really well designed, with the exception of one thing that really looks like it should be a shortcut and isn't. But honestly, I really like this track, and I think if we get more tracks in a full game that are like this, it could be incredible. But on the other hand, we have the Sinkhole, a track that is almost entirely straightaways with the occasional boring turn. The visuals are completely uninteresting and bland. Not to mention, this map barely functions. Like, it is actually impressive that you have a track roster that is one really decent track, nothing amazing, a track that fixes a lot of issues that really should be there, like straightaways and shortcuts. Because, newsflash, if you can actually read a shortcut on your initial playthrough of a track, that's incredible. And then you have a track that doesn't work. And I don't mean this with hyperbole. I quite literally mean this track does not work properly. Because you might have noticed in some of these clips, despite constantly crashing to walls in several levels and not knowing where I'm going at points, not only am I nowhere near last place, but also on almost all of these clips, I made it in top 3 by the end of the track. And that is not because I am doing well. That is because, like, genuinely every single race, someone just gets stuck on an object somewhere. Which, for clarification, your party racer game should really have other opponents other than the player, especially when co-op isn't in the game yet. But somehow, those aren't the worst bugs. I have a clip from my own recordings of this game to make this video, and also one from Astral Spiff. What? What is happening? How am I in 0th place? You can come here and look!
Oh, wake up. You're sleeping.
Here's the thing. It says to do this.
Yeah.
That's not doing anything! I've tried both! I've tried them at the same time!
Oh. What's it say?
That says fatal error.
Oh.
Thanks, Sherlock! And here's the clip from Astral Spiff that exemplifies my point.
Nice. First time playing the map, get soft lock. This is epic. Yeah. What? What? Oh, and then the game crashed.
Look, I want to be optimistic. I think this game actually has a chance to be something good if it functioned properly. Because unironically, I do really like Midnight Motorist, and Fazbear Hills is a pretty solid track. I honestly think if you add a ton more tracks and the basic necessities like local multiplayer, online multiplayer, time trials, I can keep going on basic necessities, and more carts obviously, and maybe a couple more racers so every single match doesn't have the exact same 8, you have a game that could be decently solved and worth a lower indie price tag. But at the moment, it is a hilariously bad garbage pile that I love watching and was hilarious to play. So, I mean, I enjoyed it. Genuinely, it was fun. I can enjoy things that don't work properly. I like Sonic 06. I'll admit it. But, I don't think they can charge money for this in its current state. I honestly think they might need to release a second demo closer to the game's actual release next year, just to earn back some goodwill. Moving on to the final planned announcement, FNAF Into the Pit, which in the most perfect fashion released a day early. Because of course it did. Look, you saw it in the day transition scheme. This released the same day as 5 Laps at Freddy's. By accident. Of course it did. Now, here's the awkward part. This is a full game, unlike everything else that released. No offense, MyPopgoes. You're a $5 title that can be beaten in a couple of hours. This is a game with a full campaign, multiple difficulty settings, which is a first for the series, and so many secrets. So this is going to be an interesting one to try to talk about in a video where I've already spent 30 minutes talking about other things. So I'm going to give a spoiler-free review here, and if you guys want to see it, I will be happy to make a proper review for Into the Pit. But either way, let's jump straight into it. And what exactly do I have to say? I think it's incredibly solid. I actually really like the visuals. I think it's quite unique to have a 2D sprite-based game in the series that isn't in the style of an Atari game, while still feeling retro. It gives me a lot of vibes of Super FNAF, which is an old FNAF fan game I loved back in the day. Obviously with much higher quality assets. Because this is official, that was a fan game. And this game gets to boast the very first time we've ever not only seen an open Freddy Fazbear's restaurant in a game, but also the first time in high quality we have ever seen the missing child incident. Took 10 years! And for what it is, it scared me a lot more than I expected for a game with this art style. And I mean no disrespect to this game's style. I love it. It looks great. But just wouldn't have expected it to hold up to the frights of a lot of the older games that use more realistic graphics. Or Help Wanted and Help Wanted 2, which are in VR. But oh my, genuinely, especially not having a way to really tell where the entity, as it's called, or Pit Bonnie, as I will refer to it as, and genuinely hiding from it is actually pretty fun. And it actually gets to be a guessing game if you can guess what location it is based on the sounds and movements you've heard. Which, sucks if you guess wrong, and good luck if you're playing on a difficulty with permadeath! Because this game has a permadeath option! But this game is also filled with an absolute ton of secrets, Easter eggs, and love to the franchise. The fact is, quite early on, you get a phone. You can just straight up call 911. Another thing I love is getting to do something I have suggested the player characters of these games should have done for the last 10 years. And that is just leave. You are going to die. Just go. Leave. No one wants to deal with this. There is legitimately an ending for just leaving. And I actually really like a lot of the puzzles. This game definitely focuses more on being a puzzle game than it does a horror game. And that isn't a bad thing. You need to deal with all 3 of the main animatronics on top of Pit Bonnie. But before you deal with them for the first time, you need to make them move. And the way you do that is, well, I'm not going to say, told to you in a very optional place that is very much given to you and directly pointed out to you, but you need to look at stuff and notice things. And a lot of the puzzles are like that. In all fairness, a lot of them do come down to logic puzzles. For example, there's a moment where in the present, you find stuff and you're like, oh, I need this, but this is too rusty and old. So then you go to the past, go to the same room, and grab the thing. It's a lot of logic puzzles, or trying to think, okay, I have this, where do I use this? Or, I need this, where would this be? And that works, because the mandatory puzzles, for the most part, are enjoyable, but also unique. And I really don't have much else I can say, because, again, I want to keep this spoiler-free. But this game is filled with so much small stuff, and it's genuinely quite enjoyable. I enjoyed my time with it, and once again proving to me that, frankly, the newer FNAF games are just more fun. It also helps that pretty well all of the newer ones have a lot more player agency, because you can move around, you can interact with things. It's not just sitting in a room, closing doors, and keeping yourself safe. But this game, great sprite work. Honestly, tons of references. It's really fun, and I really enjoy it. But either way, there's still one last treat we got for the anniversary. The day of the actual anniversary itself, day 8. And look, I don't have much to say. They dropped 4 potential scripts for the FNAF movie 2. Some with new characters, some with returning characters, some with a mix. Genuinely, I don't know much to say, because I also don't really know how movie scripts are typically written. So things that might seem weirdly done to me might look great when it's actually made into a movie, or if it were to be made into a movie, but I don't know movie scripts, so I can't really commentate much as is. Because, as I just said, I don't really get how movie scripts are written. I don't really get a lot of how it's worded, just mostly because I don't understand how movie scripts are written. What's a line of dialogue? What's more just describing set pieces and locations? Because they're written differently than other written media, such as books. Because they're meant to just be looked at by staff, by professionals. It's not meant to be stuff that's released to the public, because it's meant to just show people how to make the project. And with that, I've covered every single project from the FNAF 10th anniversary week celebration thing, I don't know what its name is, with mixed levels of detail. Either way, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!